So let me welcome you into this part of the series of the broadcast sessions that we are organizing on a bi-monthly basis. This week, also this quarter, we are focusing on the migration governance framework. And we have our policy officer from the regional office, Alice Kimani. She'll take us through the sessions. Welcome, Alice.
Okay, thank you very much, and hello everybody.
Hello.
Yes, so those I don't know, my name is Alice Kimani, and I work in the regional office as Regional Liaison Policy Officer. I've interacted with some of you on reporting and program issues, and so it's nice to be here. So basically, as you can see, this is a presentation that I also made in the regional office just about a month ago, and basically, we call this is not a training at all. This is just to raise awareness, because some of you may have heard of MiGOF. You may have seen an email about MiGOF, and so just from there, what have you heard and what do you know about MiGOF? Is it a monster? Is it a new IOM agency? What comes to your mind when you hear about MiGOF? Farah, I'll start with you because you're the one I know.
It sounds like, I don't know, something migration, government, and from just the name MiGOF itself. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
This is the first time.
First time. Okay, that's good. Always room for learning. Anybody else?
Well, I think it's just dealing on issues on how IOM can deal with. Oh, yeah. Dealing with issues on how IOM can relate with various government entities when dealing with migration issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Just her?
I think it's a point of reference as far as our thematic areas of operation is concerned, and it is what guides the reason behind the theory of change that we're trying to bring in place.
Yeah. Okay, good. So if we can move to the next slide, we'll see that we want to understand why MiGOF, why do we have this monster in the room, and why was it created? And basically, there are some external and internal factors. And the external factors were following the high-level dialogue on migration in 2013. Some of you may remember something like that in New York. There was a call for migration to be addressed in a coherent, comprehensive, and balanced manner, so that migration is not just something topical that people talk about. It's a good thing, but how do you address it in a coherent, a balanced manner? So there was a call at the international level to do that. And then there was also the need to integrate development, taking into consideration social and economic and environmental dimensions, and also respecting human rights. So at the time, during this HLD, there was no single document that was addressing these issues. No single document existed even among other UN agencies with regard to migration. And then there were also discussions for the Sustainable Development Goals, okay, which have been adopted. So these factors also led to people starting to think, how are we going to talk about migration in a more balanced approach? Now you will see later that migration is actually mentioned in the Sustainable Development Goals. So whatever you're doing today, always put at the back of your mind that, or ask yourself, which goal am I contributing to? Compared to the past, where we knew there were Millennium Development Goals, but apart from, I think, MHD colleagues, most people didn't really see the connection between that and IOM's work, okay? And then also member states requesting IOM to assist in governance issues and evaluation of how they approach migration. Several countries request IOM to help them to develop migration policies, and these are governance issues, okay? So those were external factors. What about internal? So IOM has made a conscious move towards results-based methodology. Those of you who are doing reports know how we usually return them back to you and tell you, stop talking about activities. Now we are talking about results. So this push is there, and the donors have actually requested that we become more results-oriented, okay? Reporting on SDGs, as I've already talked about, and then some examples of processes within IOM that have also contributed to this push. For example, regional strategy. In our region, we are actually the first region to produce a regional strategy that is mirrored on MiGOF. Result-based reporting, strengthening of monitoring and evaluation. That's why you have a lot of staff now working specifically on M&E issues, and we have ARO support in that regard. Then you have PRIMA. I don't know whether any of you is familiar with PRIMA. Yes, yes. PRIMA, this is also a platform that's being used to review and approve IDF projects, and the idea is to now cascade it to all the other projects. Yes, then MiGOF, of course. So now, how do we demystify this? Is this a monster? What is it? What is MiGOF? The most important thing to realize is that MiGOF does not create any new standards, okay? It is not creating any new standards or norms. It's exactly what IOM has been doing. What you have, how many of you have the IOM constitution on your desk? Okay, or sometimes you refer to, okay. How many of you have ever seen the IOM constitution?
Somewhere in the emails.
Somewhere in the emails. How many of you have ever seen the IOM constitution or never seen? Okay, so it's a small blue document. I would recommend that you go to the resource center and look for a copy and just familiarize yourself with it. The idea I'm saying here is that this is not a new thing. This is something that these issues are already captured in IOM documents, in IOM strategies, IOM constitution, okay? And migration law, human rights laws that are already existing that IOM is contributing to, the council resolution, and MiGOF is actually has a council resolution following the IOM council meeting that took place last year in November in Geneva. Okay, and then MCOF. Those of you working in emergency are familiar with MCOF, okay? So MiGOF is bigger, MCOF is inside. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is to tell you that this is nothing new. It's just now a more structured way of approaching IOM programming work. Okay, and feel free to ask or interject at any point. Yes, Farah.
Yeah. So, what was the need? What was the need of having this now?
Mm-hmm. Not before.
Not before.
Yeah, good question. So as I said, there were both internal and external factors. So before, as you know, many people would think of IOM as just maybe an operational organization that's just doing movements, you know. But yet there are so many other things that we do, okay, that contribute to good governance in migration. So looking at that, many donors are saying, you're not telling your story as it should be, okay? So you find that we've done a lot, but it's not documented in a way that can actually tell somebody, oh, this is what IOM is doing, okay? Or if you maybe Google, all you see is about movements. And there's nothing wrong with that, but because we do other things, why are those things not being reported? Yeah, and as I said also, in terms of reporting on a coherent and balanced approach. So again, external factors leading to that. Okay, so IOM's mission, which you're all familiar with, committed to the principle that humane and orderly migration benefits migrants and society. So again, MiGOF is contributing towards this. And what we are saying is that a state that ensures migration is humane, orderly, and benefits society, a state that does that, we are saying that state is actually adhering to the MiGOF principles and objectives. So how can a state now start evaluating itself and wondering, are we managing our migration in an orderly and humane way? Before, what was there to show them? Maybe they could look at the constitution, they could look at the strategy, which is not really a strategy because you know it's points that are written down, you know. How would they be able to measure themselves? So we're saying we're providing a platform as a start, how you can evaluate yourself. And countries, member states have actually said that they want to see, they've asked the DG that within maybe like the next 2 years, they want to see how are we doing on this. So there will be evaluations, okay? Be evaluations. Okay. So let's look at the Sustainable Development Goals. As I said, IOM is now contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. Yes, Josiah.
I'm trying to understand how MiGOF fits into the MGOF. Where does the separation of basically the link come about? Because sometimes I confuse the two documents.
Okay, we'll see as we go across to the objectives. You'll see where MGOF comes in. Remember, MiGOF is up, and then MGOF is contributing. But you'll see it as we go towards. Yeah, good question. So these are the SDGs. Can anybody tell me any goal you think right now mentions migration? One boy. Thank God if I don't know you because I won't call you. Okay, maybe I should give you this as homework. There are several goals, about 7, between 7 and 9 goals that IOM is contributing to, okay? Directly or indirectly, either to the goal or to the indicator. Which means that especially now that IOM has become a related, you're all aware, 25th July, a related UN organization, we have to be reporting on the SDGs. So I want you to, every time you're writing a proposal or you're doing your work, you're asking yourself, how is this project contributing towards a certain goal among the SDGs?
And during reporting, are we supposed to also connect our achievements or the project achievements with specific indicators or specific SDGs?
Ideal if you did that. It might be too early now to say, and headquarters is giving us guidance on how reporting will be done in that regard, but because we'll be expected to provide an annual report on that, it's good to have at the back because we will still come back and ask you, how have you contributed? So it's good to internalize it and start asking yourself, how are we actually doing this or contributing towards this? Okay? Okay, so you have all these goals. There are 17. Each of them has probably about 10 indicators, so it's almost a monster. But we are not contributing to all of them. We will not be expected to report on all of them, but there are some that are actually directly connected to our work, and we'll see. So SDGs have been adopted. They include migration. The Council has approved the MiGOF in November, and the first so far only definition or detailed articulation of SDG is 10.7, which says planned and well-managed migration policies under Goal 10. Okay? So Goal 10. Planned and managed migration policies. Obviously, there are others, but this is the main one. So when you hear people talking about Goal 10.7, you know this is what they are talking about, okay? Now, the categories in MiGOF, the principles, yes?
The goal is, you can also find it on the internet?
They're the goals.
You can find it on the internet?
Yes, they're there. If you check UNDP website, everywhere, you just Google SDGs, you'll see, they'll just pop up. Yeah. Okay, so basically what we are saying is that the 6 MiGOF categories which we are going to look at in detail, they are currently used as the headline indicators for 10.7. Now, I don't know whether this is too, maybe it's not of interest, but on 19th September, when the formal agreement is signed to make IOM a related UN agency, one of the products that they hope to be endorsed is the MiGOF at the now General Assembly. This has already been accepted and endorsed by the Council, but this and a compact, I'm sure you've been seeing those discussions to address migrants, and now the G77 is pushing for another one on refugees. So these documents will be adopted formally. Okay, yeah. But for now, as IOM, this document is let me call it a legal document, but it's a document that is in use or in force within IOM. Okay? So how does migration, oops, did we lose the slide? Oh, hello, I didn't say hi to them. Hi, I'm sorry.
We lost them.
We lost them?
Yeah, but you can just continue.
Okay, so how will you see?
Just continue.
Yeah, please continue. It's very nice, very good.
Yeah. Can you mute on your side, please?
Okay. Okay, but they won't see the presentation. How do we do that? It's okay. Okay. Okay, so how does migration, how is migration reflected in the 2030 agenda? So you have goal 4. Okay, let me put it this way. Let's talk more about the goals and the targets. So say, for example, 4.B on scholarships, okay? So there is a goal on, let me make this bigger. Quality education. Do you have ops in Somalia? No. No. Ops is in Kenya office. You know that they assist students who have scholarships and they need a ticket. They give them discounted tickets. Yes. So even ops are contributing to the SDGs. My point, I'm saying every work that IOM is doing is going to be guided by something. It's not just doing work. And we are actually contributing. And many people may ask you, so what's the point of doing that kind of work? It's actually contributing to a goal. Okay. Let me talk about trafficking. For example, you have 5.2 trafficking on for women and girls, migrant workers. You have implementation of integrated policies in cities under 11.B. You have another one on climate change, okay? So migration has been put in those goals, and you'll see in the handout when you get the presentation. Yeah? Can you see?
Just continue.
Okay. Mine is even hanging. Quality education. Do you have ops in Somalia? No. Ops is in Kenya office. You know that they assist students who have scholarships and they need a ticket. They give them discounted tickets. Yes. So even ops are contributing to the SDGs. My point, I'm saying every work that IOM is doing is going to be guided by something. It's not just doing work. And we are actually contributing. And many people may ask you, so what's the point of doing that kind of work? It's actually contributing to a goal. Okay. Let me talk about trafficking. For example, you have 5.2 trafficking on for women and girls, migrant workers. You have implementation of integrated policies in cities under 11.B. You have another one on climate change, okay? So migration has been put in those goals, and you'll see in the handout when you get the presentation. Yeah? Can you see?
Just continue.
Okay. Mine is even hanging. Okay. Yeah. So now, as a state, when you ask yourself, when is good migration governance achieved? Assuming, where do you come from?
Canada.
Canada. How did I know that? Okay, I was about to say Canada. Anyway, if you look at Canada, let's say you're representing Canada, Canadian government, and then you're asked, how does Canada measure itself Or how does it view itself in terms of good migration governance? What are the questions?
Like what would we measure?
Yes, yes. What would you say?
Our legislation, our policy, international best standards.
Yes, good, good. So policies, the standards that you apply, methodology, you know, is putting barbed wire somewhere a good practice? You don't have to answer that question. Is building a wall a good practice? You don't have to answer that question. It's a question that it will be self-reflection, okay? But what we are saying is a comprehensive approach to good migration governance is where humane, safe, and orderly migration takes place, and where migration benefits migrants and society. Okay? So, for example, if there are jobs in a certain country, and the government wants to impress its citizens and says, go, 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 come, 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 we are offering jobs, but they have not set up the infrastructure on the other side, then the migrants flock their offices, they go to this country, they are exploited, they find that the infrastructure does not allow them to send remittances. Is that beneficial? Is that beneficial? And I'm using that because these are real examples. We know there are situations where migrants have actually been encouraged to go to a country, they work, and they cannot remit their money back home. Because one, they are not allowed to spend, they're only allowed to spend maybe in that currency, and they're not allowed to transmit money unless they're transmitting in that country's foreign currency, which will not help. But even then, they're not even allowed, in some cases, they're not, like a few years ago, Kenyan teachers went to Seychelles, and they couldn't remit their money back home, you see. So at some point is when the government of Kenya approached IOM and said, hey, we need help. We actually did this without thinking too much about it. So good migration governance is achieved when there is humane, safe, and orderly migration, and when it benefits migrants and society. So the traditions and institutions by which authority on migration and nationality in a country is exercised, including capacity of the government to effectively formulate and implement sound policies. These are big definitions by the Worldwide Governance Indicators, the World Bank. This is how they define good migration governance. Now, by who? Remember, it's the state's prerogative. It's the state which determines what is good migration governance for them. If they think that building a wall is a good thing, there's nothing we can do, okay? If they think that putting a fence, if they think that putting in place an infrastructure that promotes sending of remittances, yes, we can support. So we support where we see there's humane and orderly principles, and we'll see about human rights principles, okay? In other places, we cannot criticize them, but we offer guidance and advice. Are we together? Okay. Then international organizations are supported or are requested by states to provide support. Again, very, very important, especially in migration, to have that letter of request from government. Because remember, migration is a very sensitive topic, so you don't want to be seen that you're forcing something on a government. This is why it's very important to have the letter of request, you know, that the government has actually expressed an interest in this kind of intervention. Yeah. Any questions so far? Yvonne?
Even if the host country maybe they don't have, humane, as you say, migration laws and all this. I think we still have a role to play because this is still at policy level, so we can play the advocacy role to really tell them, okay, this is what you guys are doing, and it's not, in at par with maybe international standards, humanitarian law and that. I think we still have the part, to play our part as the agency in charge of migration.
Yes. Absolutely, and we'll see that in the principles, okay? So we can't shy away and say that because they are doing that, we are going to leave them alone. We can guide and advise, but of course we can't force them to do anything. But we can guide and advocate, as you have rightly put it.
Is it not a binding document? Because by virtue of all these countries being the states of Ireland, is MiGOF not a binding document that expects all countries to abide by these standards?
This is a very good question, Farah. So maybe I should have mentioned earlier that IOM remains a non-normative organization. And you have seen that also explained in the email that came from ODG following the new development. So by virtue of being non-normative, this is not a normative document. Yes, this is like a, what can you say, like a guideline. Yes, so even it has been, yes, adopted at the council, but it's not like a treaty. You see, it's not a treaty or, a statute that they must. We are just saying, because you want to be guided and you want to promote good migration governance, here is some guidance. Okay, yeah. Do we see the difference? Yeah, so we don't have a reporting mechanism where, states go and report like the Human Rights Council and talk, about obligations or those kind of things. No, but it is expected that at some point, member states will come back to the council and say, oh, this is what we've been able to do. This is, sort of like a self-driven. So I give you an example, even the SDGs. You see, they are not binding, yes, but governments are encouraged. For example, the high-level HLPF, High-Level Policy Forum, just took place in July, where 22 countries volunteered to actually just go to New York and say, hey, after the SDGs, this is what we have put in place so far. Nobody forced them, they just volunteered. In our region, only Uganda volunteered. So the Prime Minister went and set out the agenda of how Uganda is actually planning to implement the SDGs. Nobody forced them. So this is the same thing. So you can't force them, but you trust because they have signed onto this that they will actually ask IOM for help, and where we are able to help, we will help, and where we see them digressing, we are actually able to guide them. Okay? Yes.
In situations where a country is a non-member state, they are not a member of
IOM. Yeah, so if they are not a member of IOM, okay, so you know how it happens. If you're not a member, you're an observer. You're an observer. So because it was adopted by the council, if you become a member, then of course you're also expected. Yeah, but when you're not, we still guide you. I give you an example. Ethiopia, many people don't know, but Ethiopia only became an IOM member in 2012. But all this time IOM has been operating there even with an SLO. It doesn't mean they were not doing anything on migration. They were still requesting IOM for guidance, and we would still offer it to them. Yes. Okay, so using MiGOF categories, as we'll see, for planning and reporting aligns IOM with the SDG indicators, therefore helping the donors to identify sectors of funding, to help countries see how they can contribute towards the migration-related targets, as we've talked about, and then to advocate for a formal role in monitoring SDG implementation, which now has been overtaken by events because in February, the target now, 10.7, was accepted as a formal target in the SDG framework. So let's look at now this MiGOF in whatever. So we have principles and objectives. And the first principle is what you have alluded to. Your name, please?
Abubakar.
Abubakar, yes. Abubakar, you talked about the role of IOM in advocating member states to adhere to international standards and principles. This is our role, and this is what we must continue doing. So the first principle is adherence to international standards and fulfillment of migrants' rights. Which are some of the standards we contribute to? This one, each one of you should know. So we start this way. Name any international human rights standard or migration law standard that you know that you you are aware IOM contributes to?
Contribute to the labor law?
Labor law. Which labor law?
LMHD. I pass it to you specifically.
LMH. Which one is that?
Labor. It's labor.
And mobility.
And human, mobility and human development.
That's a unit within IOM.
It's a unit within IOM, but it does, yeah.
Okay. Good try, yes?
Human rights standards.
Which one? Yeah, so many.
Providing asylum to asylum seekers. Something?
Okay, and which one is that?
You don't know the specific name.
1951 Refugee Convention. Okay? Abubakar?
The international material law, specifically freedom of movement,
You-
Competence.
yes.
UDHR, you mean the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Okay? Mamboy?
Access to basic.
I need to go back to it.
Is that a human rights law?
It's not that I'm going to change. Orderly movement of people.
Which law is that? Which standard? Okay, you guys need a human rights class, yes?
The right to access to health.
Yes, that's under Universal Declaration of Human Rights. DHR. Okay. Yvonne? Para?
UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Very good. Yes.
I was going to say International Convention on Human Rights. I don't know anything else.
Okay, Josiah? Sanyu? Oh, okay. So you guys need a human rights class. but this is the thing. It's very important for you to understand that everything that we do should also be linked to human rights work. So there's a lot of talk of how now IOM will start becoming a rights-based organization. But if we don't even know which rights, that's a big problem, you see. So we need to go back to the basics. Which are these rights we are talking about? Farah has mentioned a very important one, and UNCRC, the United Nations Rights Convention of the Rights to the Child. What is it called? United Nations? Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is the most universally signed or accepted convention, and now, because Somalia signed, only one country is left. Which one? That has not signed UNCRC? The US.
Yes.
You're kidding me.
Yes.
How was I?
So the US hasn't signed. So this is a very important, especially in your work, because sometimes you work with unaccompanied children, isn't it? Yes. Or think about the other conventions like the CEDAW. Okay? Yes. Okay? All these international standards, you know them. Maybe that you have not really actually internalized them and seen how your work contributes to that. So what we are saying here is we are trying to help government to adhere to these principles, because what happens is these governments go to New York or to Geneva and they sign these documents. Some of them sign blindly, some of them sign because there is pressure, some of them sign because they believe in the principles. When they come back home, do they actually put in place structures to make sure that these treaties trickle down to their level or domesticate them in order to implement them? Think about the Palermo Protocol in trafficking, you know? It's your homework to find out whether Somalia has ratified Palermo Protocol, no? Which is a bigger one, which is under the convention, on elimination of transnational organized crime, the CATOC, you know? So it has various: money laundering, counterterrorism, trafficking, smuggling, okay? So if a government has signed this, have they put in place legislation and guidelines to make sure that this becomes operational? So this is what we are talking about. Or even the famous one, I was hoping some of you would mention it, The UN Convention on Migrant Workers and Families. Okay, so here, okay, adherence to international standards. So we advocate, we encourage them. In some cases, we even help the countries develop the legislation, okay? In Kenya, when I was working in Kenya and Tanzania, we actually helped the government to develop counter-trafficking legislation, even in Rwanda, okay? So we do play that. Even in Ethiopia, we've done that, okay? So we do play that role. The second principle is evidence and whole of government approaches to migration governance terms. Anybody wants to try? Evidence and whole of government approaches to migration governance. What do you think this means in layman's language? Okay, guys. Are we together? Yes. There's no wrong answers. So
I think maybe structures, sorry. I think maybe it looks into issues like the structure that a particular government have put into place in dealing with these issues around migration and governance.
Yes, very good. Anybody else? Sir?
Different national governments actually are able to demonstrate the integration of these different standards, principles, and all these frameworks is actually being domesticated as far as their practices are concerned.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would say when a government is developing a policy, it's not siloed. It's considering each like internal, maybe like department or ministry, like a whole level approach, right? So if we're developing a migration policy in border management, because that's my background. It's not just with the immigration office, let's say it's with incorporating like health and different components, incorporating like the police department because it overlaps with trafficking. So to make sure it's like a whole comprehensive approach to whatever they're developing. And then in terms of the evidence, ensuring that there's backing, that policies are evidence-based. So ensuring that there's facts to support the policies that they're creating.
Absolutely, very good, and related to what you said. So making sure that there is a cohesion in government, because many times, as you have rightly mentioned, you find governments, ministries working in silos. You see? Ministry of Labor is doing this, but immigration doesn't know, the police don't know, health is not integrated. So what we are saying here is that trying to integrate everything so that the government is speaking as one voice and they're intervening in a whole of government approach. At the same time, they are also using evidence to back their interventions. It's not just haphazard. You know, there's good data collection, evidence is being used to develop policy. This is what we are encouraging. There is a regional project that is right now funded by the Swiss government, and money was given to IGAD, and IGAD has funded IOM, and IOM Somalia is actually implementing this project, and I'm in touch with Julia on that. And this project is implemented in the IGAD countries, except Eritrea, where we don't have presence. And the idea is to help governments have structures, okay, that can actually help them to develop this whole of government approach. So if government decides that this is the lead ministry, all the other ministries should contribute towards that effort so that they are all speaking in one language. So they are going to establish what you call the national coordination mechanisms on migration. Okay? So our region will probably be one of the first to come up with this kind of approach, and we are really hoping that governments will do that. I want to commend also Somalia because an interministerial task force on migration was already created, and this is now building towards that, so that all units, all government agencies, when they're thinking about migration, they're all talking in one language. One is not doing something different, and the other one doing it in a different way. Okay. So let's go to the third principle, and this is very important, which you are already engaged with. You're already doing this. This is partnerships, okay? I think IOM Somalia has gone many steps ahead because your partnerships with the private sector are actually very commendable. So what we are saying here again is nothing new. We are saying that strong partnerships to support migration government, recognizing that not one agency can deal with migration issues. You must collaborate with the private sector, with the non-state actors like NGOs, CBOs, FBOs, who everybody must work together to create strong partnerships. Okay? Yes. On the principles?
Somalia will have different non-state actors.
Yes.
Not just the non-NGOs, but even the other guys.
Local authorities, yes, all of them are put, but those local authorities are state actors. But non-state actors, you mean like?
Al-Shabaab, the militias who are controlling other areas, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be specific about that.
Yeah, I guess, yes, let me not comment that because I'm not a CVE expert. Yeah, but you have a point with regard to, for example, if we're doing programs aimed at reintegrating ex-combatants, then how do we engage them, How do we engage them to make sure that, yes, our projects are successful? Okay, so let's look at the objectives. So the first objective is looking at the socio-economic well-being of migrants and society. Again, IOM Somalia is already doing that. A lot of your projects are on livelihood opportunities, and these opportunities for creating livelihoods, what do? They actually contribute to the socio-economic well-being of migrants and the society as a whole. Okay? Yes. I say there's nothing new. Can you see now there's nothing new in this big monster? Yes, it's just trying to bring things into perspective, what we are already doing. Okay. The second objective is effective responses to the mobility dimension of crisis. And this is where MiGOF comes in. Okay? How do we effectively respond at, pre-intervention, during the intervention, and after? Okay? And even during the intervention and as we think about intervening after, are we linking those interventions and looking at it even in the long term in terms of linking humanitarian and development work so that we are not always in a humanitarian mode but can also now think into going into a development mode, okay? And the third one is safe, orderly, and dignified pathways of migration. This is the mantra of IOM. This is what we have always had to do. This is always what we do, to make sure that migrants are moving in a dignified, orderly, and safe manner. Okay? So basically what we are saying here is that these principles, they represent the means through which a state will ensure that the systematic requirements for good migration governance are in place. Okay? So this is what will guide this is what will guide the states, these principles. And they are not new, okay? And then the objectives, they make sure that these practices are governed in a more coherent manner and in an integrated and holistic way. So if we look, for example, if we go deep into the principle, the first principle, think about efforts to combat xenophobia, racism, discrimination, and ensuring that principles of non-discrimination, human rights, all those that you mentioned are adhered to, okay? So what you're telling governments is, if you're having problems of discrimination in your country, or xenophobia, okay? These are not promoting human rights. And how can IOM help you to develop policies and programs to make sure that this doesn't happen, okay? Or to mitigate that. How do you ensure a state abides by the humanitarian principles when providing assistance to migrants? Even when you think about forced migrants, you handled the cases of the migrants who are deported from Saudi Arabia. Yes. You remember the process, right from the airport from Riyadh where they were up to the place where they're received in Ethiopia or in Somalia. How are they coming back home in a dignified manner? No.
No.
Yes, you know? So how do you help the state to make sure that these principles are in place? And this is where IOM comes in. Okay? Displacement issues, making sure that there is no discrimination based on gender, sexual orientation. Victims of trafficking are treated in a respectable manner, no secondary victimization. Refugees, separated families, stranded migrants. What about the legal status of migrants? Those who are undocumented, those who are irregular, they still deserve humane treatment. Okay, yes. Making sure that gender perspective are taken into consideration, making sure that all these human rights, I won't go into them, details, but you'll see it in the presentation when you get the handout. The second principle, evidence of whole government, we've touched on it. The issue of data. Okay, making sure that data is collected and disseminated in the right way to make sure that these policies are actually based on evidence, not haphazard information. So looking at the trends, education, to inform the labor market, to inform policy. Okay. Now, let me give an example of how, even when you have evidence, things may not always work the way you think. Do you remember Brexit? Okay. There was evidence from the National Statistics Commission that showed that migrants had actually contributed positively to the economy in the UK. But there were sentiments still among the population that migration is a problem or is going to pose a problem, you know, depending on who was giving their narrative. So there are people who actually voted thinking that it's the problems being experienced in the UK as a result of migration, even though the evidence was there. You see? So we cannot guarantee that when you have evidence, things will always work in another way, because ultimately the citizens of that country have the right to vote how they want to vote. Okay. But what we are saying is, we as IOM would encourage governments to make sure that at least their policies or interventions are backed up by data, okay, and sound evidence.
Mm-hmm. And does that also include the effects of these policies? How to mitigate for example, you have to have assumptions on certain policies.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there is evidence-based, you might find that the policy has some positive or negative impacts.
Mm-hmm.
There's also now this migration governance framework coming into play on advising the government on how to mitigate such.
I think it largely depends on context. So say for example, migration policy. How do governments develop migration policies? The recommended way usually is if you do a migration profile, it should be able to help inform your policy. Now, we have no control of what we are going to find when we do the migration profile. We have no control about the variables, about the findings. We don't have control. All we can do is guide government and say, so for example, migration profile for this country found that you have very many people in the diaspora in a certain region, for example, okay? And then you find that the people in the diaspora, they are not able to remit money through the formal channels. Why are they not able to do that? Because the cost of sending money through Western Union or MoneyGram is so expensive that they cannot afford. So what do? They end up using informal channels, which means that the data and the statistics, they cannot be, the central bank of that country cannot capture that information. And maybe this is something that the government wants to do. So what can we advise us as IOM? So in that regard, we would tell them that we can provide some technical assistance to see what kind of avenues would be preferable for the migrants in this country so they can be sending money in an affordable manner, you see. So this is where you have like interventions through this ACP Migration Action Plan, which Somalia, for example, is part of, where we are helping the government on technical assistance on remittances, you see. Yeah, so those kind of things, yeah. So if we go to the third principle, partnerships, this I won't dwell into. Again, I said Somalia is leading in this, in terms of your partnerships with different UN agencies, international organizations, private sector, and others. Migrant associations, very, very important. You realize that the movement of assisting the migrants who are stranded, or rather who are deported from Saudi Arabia, was funded by a migrant association from where? Ethiopia. Ethiopia diaspora came together, they collected money, and they actually helped. They contributed to that fund, which is very, very impressive. Yeah. Any comments? Too boring? Too technical? Too technical?
Not technical, but units new to basically understand how it relates with the...
Yeah, but can you see any connection at all? Do you feel like you've moved from unknown to a bit of known in some way?
Yes. I think what we always do is, it's just that we don't have a framework that guides us. All our projects contribute to human rights. We seek partnerships.
Yes.
All this. It's just that now it's putting it into perspective. Starting principles.
Very good. And when it comes to reporting, because now we'll be we are required to provide a report to the Director General every year, which he provides to the Council. We have a way of reporting. It's not haphazard. Yes. Okay. If we look at the elements of the objectives, again, I won't go into details. We already talked about them, and you already do this, providing healthcare, social services, education. We may not be the ones providing housing, but we contribute to that. We are very much involved in the Habitat 3 negotiations that are going on. The meeting is going to take place in Ecuador in October. There's another meeting taking place in Indonesia. Several meetings have been going into that and looking at the policies, positive way of making sure that migrants issues are addressed at local authorities, ministries of housing, all that, to make sure that the needs of migrants are taken care of, especially in big cities where they may become, what can I say, invisible. Yeah. Okay. So you asked about MiGOF. Abdul Kadir.
Abu is okay.
Abu, okay. Yes. So in this is where you'll see Objective 2. Objective 2, you'll see effective responses to the mobility dimension of crisis. And this is where MiGOF comes in. Because MiGOF is talking about early transition, post-recovery efforts, intervention at what point to make sure that emergency needs of the displaced population are taken care of, okay? And some of the elements, you try to make sure that there are access for humanitarian aid workers. You've seen the challenges that we have even in many countries in conflict where you cannot even access, okay? So we are saying a country that adheres to MiGOF should remember that they should provide access to humanitarian workers. Do you see? Yeah. They should facilitate access to consular services and evacuation of nationals who are stranded. Think about Okay, so objective 3, I think this is the most familiar one. Safe, orderly, and dignified pathways of migration. So making sure that the migrants have access to adequate and regular channels for migration, mobility, residence, citizenship, regardless of gender, age, or other characteristics, efficiency in visa processes. IOM does have these VACs, you know VACs? Yes, for ensuring in countries, ensuring visa facilitation, identifying and referring those who are in need of asylum, for example, okay? Making sure there's documentation of these returning nationals, and IBM work, you know, your area. Yeah, so this is captured here. So how can we apply this? We've already talked about it. How are we going to apply this to our daily work? Now, I've already said that whether we like it or not, this is already adopted by the council, so there's nothing we can do, okay? So the MiGOF is a guide to the organization's activities, okay? And it will support capacity building and training, project development and planning and reporting within IOM. So this is something that we must adhere to and follow and assist governments to do, okay? The DG is going to report to the IOM Council on a regular basis on how MiGOF is being applied. And do you know that Geneva does not implement projects? So they will come to the field. So we will come to you. So this is it. Member states to use the MiGOF to enhance their own governance of migration with support from IOM. Okay? So you can see here that us, as IOM staff, we have an obligation. The member states themselves, they have an obligation because they have adopted this at the council. So it's important for them to actually also adhere to these principles. Now, this might be too technical for now, so I'll jump this. Country assessment, but just to let you know that there are some countries that have been assessed. There are about 10 that have actually been assessed to see how they are doing in terms of migration policy, frameworks, what standards they have adhering to. And in Africa, we had Ghana and South Africa. So there is what you call the MGI. Anyone ever heard of an MGI? Migration Governance Index. And this was developed in collaboration with the Economic Intelligence Unit. And this is the intelligence unit of the Economist magazine. Anyone who reads Economists? Yes. So their intelligence unit worked with IOM to develop this index that actually helps states to determine how they are doing in terms of migration governance. But that is too technical. Let me not go into that for now. Now, next. Okay, so some of the intended results. How many have contributed to the migration initiatives that Mitsue prepared for Somalia? Farah? Everybody? The beautiful ladies at the back?
Yes.
Okay. So, have you ever seen the document itself? Migration initiative? Or do you know what you're contributing to? Or are you just told, contribute and you send obediently? Yes, there is a document called Migration Initiatives. So this document, it's called the MI. So the MI, the structure has changed now, and it's based on MiGOF. Okay? So countries in the region, they write up what they want to do in the following year, because this is used as a fundraising tool, and they mirror that based on MiGOF. So this is the second year that it's being done on MiGOF, and Somalia did a very good job, actually, on that. So you're already on track. Yes.
It's a nice photo.
Yes, yes. Okay? Then there is going to be something called the annual report. I'm sure you also contributed to that, okay? It is also going to be based on MiGOF. So you have to sing and eat and drink MiGOF, okay? Yes. So what are the next steps as we finish? Focus on impact and results of IOM's work. Communicate more clearly to IOM member states and others for their IOM's value for money and effectiveness. So what you're saying is to a donor, the donor wants to see results. They don't care about how many workshops you held. They want to understand, as a result of those workshops, was there an intended change in the behavior or attitudes of those people you trained? So even if you did 65 trainings, it is okay, but that is not the end product, okay? How are these trainings actually contributing to the change in behavior, in attitude, or increasing knowledge among the government officials? So reporting and focusing on results. Results. This is what is called results-based management. And this is what donors want to see. They don't care about the numbers.
It's going to be tricky sometimes, perceptions and attitudes are more hard to gauge, and it's long term. And IOM projects are normally, they're given a 6-month project, you're given a 1-year project, and you go to another area or something like that. But if you have a sustained, you can measure, for a period of time, but there's no way it's going to change. And sit down in an M&E and say, yeah, we've changed from this percentage to this percentage. So maybe we also need to think about, how our projects are designed. And I don't know if joining the UN now will help us in a way to find out, to have these pool fundings and all that. But yeah. Results, yes, it's a good thing. It's evidence and everything, but how would you do that in a span of a year or something?
Yeah, those are very important points, because we've also brought this to the attention of management, and we've also realized that. But we cannot keep using that as an excuse, because we do know that there are projects that have been implemented for the last 3-5 years. And when we see the proposal for the next phase, we see what? No baseline. Surely. You can implement a project for 5 years and then you don't have a baseline. So what are you really doing? Do you see what I mean? So what about what we are already doing? Forget about SAF projects or CHF that are short-term, which are evaluated by the UN in a different capacity. Or forget about IOM short-term projects. But we know that we have long-term projects, or projects that are related to something that we've done in the past, where we don't really report on results. Is that true? Yeah. So we have to also, it's self-reflecting and looking back and saying, now, how can we really look at how we are contributing to the results? Okay? Yes, Farah?
For example, on capacity building, it's very difficult now to say, it's very easy to report on, we've conducted 65 trainings this year. But for the change of attitudes and behaviors of the staff with a high turnover in a place like Somalia, is it now, will it be possible to now do projections and say, okay, by virtue of us doing 1, 2, and 3, and on evidences of this in another setting, we foresee or we expect that, this will be good. Is that a good way of reporting?
Yes, so this is the thing. I think at the end of the day, we have to ask painful questions. Are we being effective? Are we being effective or not? If after 3 years we assess and find that after 65 trainings we've really not done much, is it really worth it doing this intervention? So the thing is, hard questions will be asked, but we have to move away from the thing of maybe only doing projects because the money is there. Do you see? It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. Which it's a total paradigm shift. It's a behavior. And even from ourselves as IOM, it's something that will have to really change. But this is the reality. It's coming, So, why I'm talking specifically about training is not so much that the trainings are not important. They are important because capacity building is a key thing in IOM's intervention. What we are saying is this: what kind of commitment also can we seek from government to say, if you're really, really committed to changing practices, for example, in a certain area, okay? You will not be able to do that if you have turnover, high turnover levels, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, you know. In order for us as IOM to see the change, and for you as government to also get value for your money, for intervention, it is important for you to also have like a long-term strategy in your department to say that for this intervention, we are going to make sure that at least these officers are here for the next, you know. Again, this is idealistic because in Somalia the context is very different. I totally understand. But now I'm talking generally in IOM. Okay? I'm talking generally in IOM because we do know there are many projects where we do capacity building, but if after 3 or 4 years we have not seen a result, then we should be asking ourselves whether we need to redesign the project or whether we need to rethink our objectives. Are we together? So I say this with all due respect, understanding that Somalia context is very different, but also understanding that Somalia is making progress, even though we see things on the other side, maybe not reported in the media. We do know, we work there, we know that there's progress in many areas, you know. Yeah. Okay, so IDM, okay, sorry. 2016 International Dialogue on Migration. This is the IDM meeting that's taking place in October in Geneva, and another one took place in February in New York. Specifically, we're talking about SDGs and the relationship between MiGOF and SDGs. So giving opportunity to governments and other stakeholders to come together and talk about migration issues. So I'm just saying this is high on the agenda of IOM and member states. Migration initiatives, we talked about it, more results structured, and then we've given you a brochure, which you have, and you can read about it. Yes. The project handbook is currently under revision, and it's going to be including references to MiGOF and RBM. The annual report, I've talked about that. Again, it's going to look at, it's going to be mirrored on MiGOF using the framework. And then the 4 monthly reports that we are preparing to help with the annual report. Other steps, the regional strategy, which we have Somalia country strategy, RBM focal points, M&E focal points, all understanding that now we are moving towards results, okay? Yeah, and then using reactions and questions from the Chief of Mission meetings, results to the DG annual report. These are some of the things we've already done, so may not be very applicable. Okay, so summary of MiGOF applications, reference document for a coherent, comprehensive, and balanced set of principles and objectives. You've already alluded to the fact that you already do this, but now you're having something to guide you. Basis for indicators to assist states in evaluating their approaches to migration. Guiding IOM work in fundraising, advocacy, policy work, a framework for results-based reporting and planning, and maybe communicating more and looking at the impacts in our communities through results eyes, so that when we are presenting to donors, we are not just again talking about numbers which are good, but looking also at the results, even direct results to the communities, you know, how our beneficiaries actually benefiting from our interventions, and even giving them an opportunity for feedback from the beneficiaries. So they say, are you just here driving big cars and doing many things but we can't see on the ground, or can they tangibly touch the outputs and say this is what we have done?
Can I borrow your mind on one thing that has been the community feedback mechanism. As I maybe IOM Somalia, maybe IOM Kenya, where I was, it has been a hard thing to, like maybe you can have community where they come to your office or they come to your field teams, they talk about, maybe you have focus group discussion,
Yes.
feedback and all that. But we have a structured way or a tool that IOM has specifically on getting feedback from the community, not necessarily going to the field staff who is there to really relay the impact of the project and what they want to change or what positive they like. I say this because most of the other INGOs and other UN organizations in Somalia are using like toll-free lines, where the community just carry the number and it's free and all that, and they can measure, how many people call, what are their questions, and do we have something like that in that?
Yes.
The regional?
Yes. I have seen something, and I can ask our M&E officer, Robert, to send you a community-based mechanism for getting feedback. There's something that exists. Yes, so I will ask him to share with you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else with a question or comment? I know you're all tired and you want to go for lunch. Yes. So I thank you very much for your patience and for coming to listen. If you have any questions, please feel free to write to me or to write to anybody at the Arrow to help and to guide you. Again, this was more demystifying and helping you to start thinking about it. But Julia, who is the focal point for MiGOF for Somalia, once there's a training we are going for, once now we get this is based on reading and just getting the information, and I came up, with this customized presentation for our region. But we hope that now after the training we'll be more able to give you now the necessary tools and guidance to help you. But this was more just creating awareness so that when you hear about it, you don't think it's a big monster, but you understand that it's something that actually like a tool or a framework that can guide you in your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you too for coming.
And the colleagues in Somalia, I hope they didn't get too bored and left. Oh, they had to go for prayers. Okay.
The next
Okay.
round session will be the first 2 weeks of August, and it is going to be on the regional strategy. It was basically decided to come after this because the regional strategy was based on the MiGOF framework, like she mentioned, and that's where now we shall also develop our own once the current one expires. So thank you for coming, and we encourage you to also participate in coming sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.